A millionaire discovers a homeless little girl in his office. What happens next leaves him in tears as she unexpectedly saves him from a $500 million disaster. Before we dive into this story of betrayal and unexpected hope, drop a comment with where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe. The 42nd floor of the Madison Tower gleamed under the morning sun as 28-year-old Michael Harrison stood before the floor-to-ceiling windows of his corner office. His perfectly tailored navy suit reflected his position as CEO of Harrison Industries, a technology empire worth $800 million. The young millionaire had inherited this responsibility at 25 when his father passed away, and today marked the most crucial day in the company's history. "Sir, the Japanese investors will arrive in 30 minutes, his assistant Sarah announced through the intercom. Michael's jaw tightened. The merger with Takeshi Corporation would either secure his company's future or destroy everything his family had built over 3 generations. As he reviewed the final contract details, a soft rustling sound came from behind his mahogany desk. Michael froze. His private elevator required a special key card, and security was tighter than Fort Knox. He slowly turned around, expecting to find an intruder, but instead discovered something that made his heart skip a beat. A small girl, no more than 6 years old, sat curled up behind his desk chair. Her blonde hair was tangled and dirty, her pink dress torn and stained. She held a worn teddy bear close to her chest, her bright blue eyes wide with fear and exhaustion. But what shocked Michael most was that she was reading through his confidential merger documents, her small finger tracing the legal text with surprising focus. "How did you get in here?" Michael whispered, his voice gentle despite his confusion. The little girl looked up at him with those piercing blue eyes, and something in his chest tightened. She reminded him of someone, but he couldn't place who. "The bad men downstairs," she whispered back, her voice barely audible. "They were chasing me. I hid in the elevator when someone came up." Her tiny hands shook as she spoke, and Michael noticed she was barefoot, her feet dirty and cut. Michael's protective instincts kicked in immediately. He knelt down to her level, his expensive suit forgotten. "You're safe now. What's your name, sweetheart?" "Emma," she replied, clutching her teddy bear tighter. "Mister, this paper, it's wrong." Michael blinked in confusion. "What do you mean?" Emma pointed to a specific clause in the merger agreement. "This number here, it says 500 million. But the calculator on your desk shows different numbers." Someone changed it. Her innocent voice carried a certainty that made Michael's blood run cold. He grabbed the contract and his calculator, his hands trembling as he double-checked the figures. Emma was right. The acquisition price had been altered from 300 million to 500 million, a difference that would bankrupt his company and transfer control to the Japanese corporation. Someone had sabotaged the deal, and this homeless little girl had just saved his entire empire. "My God," Michael breathed, staring at Emma in amazement. "You just saved my company." The boardroom fell silent as Michael burst through the doors, clutching the corrected contract in one hand and gently holding Emma's small hand in the other. The Japanese investors, led by Mr. Takeshi, sat frozen in their chairs, their faces a mixture of surprise and confusion at the sight of the disheveled child. "Gentlemen, we need to discuss these document discrepancies immediately," Michael announced, his voice steady despite the chaos of the morning. Emma stayed close to his side, her teddy bear pressed against her chest as she observed the suited men with curious eyes. Michael's uncle Robert, the company's chief financial officer, stood up abruptly. "Michael, what is the meaning of this? And who is this child?" His voice carried a sharp edge that made Emma instinctively step behind Michael's legs. "This is Emma," Michael replied firmly. "And she just prevented us from signing a fraudulent contract that would have cost us $500 million. He placed the documents on the conference table, pointing to the altered figures. Someone changed the acquisition price. And if we had signed this, Harrison Industries would have been bankrupt within 6 months. The room erupted in whispered conversations. Mr. Takeshi examined the documents with a magnifying glass, his expression growing more serious with each passing moment. Harrison-san, these alterations are indeed present. This is most concerning. Robert's face flushed red. This is absurd. You're trusting the word of a street child over our legal team? He gestured dismissively at Emma, who shrank further behind Michael. This merger has been planned for months. We can't let some random vagrant derail our negotiations. Michael's protective instincts flared. That random vagrant just saved our company, Uncle Robert. The question is, who had access to these documents to alter them? Emma tugged on Michael's sleeve, her small voice barely audible. Mr. Michael, the man in the grey suit. He was at the copy machine last night when I was hiding. All eyes turned to Robert, who wore a grey suit identical to the one Emma described. The colour drained from his face as he realized the implications. You can't possibly believe a homeless child over your own family. But Michael was already connecting the dots. Robert had been pressuring him to sell the company for months, claiming they needed the cash flow. As CFO, he had access to all financial documents. And Emma's innocent observation had just exposed a betrayal that cut deeper than any business rival could. Security, please escort my uncle from the building, Michael said quietly, and contact the police. We have a case of corporate fraud to report. As Robert was led away, still protesting his innocence, Michael knelt down beside Emma. Are you hungry, sweetheart? Would you like something to eat? Emma nodded shyly, and for the first time that day, Michael smiled. This little girl had not only saved his company, but had also revealed the truth about someone he had trusted implicitly. The merger could wait. Right now, he had a more important responsibility. The executive break room had been transformed into an impromptu haven for Emma. Michael had ordered his assistant to bring children's clothes, food, and toys while he postponed all meetings for the day. Emma sat at the polished marble table, her small legs swinging as she ate a sandwich with the hunger of someone who hadn't had a proper meal in days. Where do you live, Emma? Michael asked gently, sitting across from her with a cup of coffee he hadn't touched. The events of the morning had left him shaken, not just by his uncle's betrayal, but by the profound connection he felt to this mysterious child. Emma's chewing slowed. Nowhere, really. Sometimes the church lady lets me sleep in the basement, but mostly I stay in the park or empty buildings. She took another bite, her eyes never leaving Michael's face. My mummy used to say I was smart with numbers, but she went to heaven 2 years ago. Michael's heart clenched. What about your daddy? Never had one, Emma replied matter-of-factly. Mummy said he was a good man, but he didn't know about me. She paused, studying Michael's face with those intense blue eyes. You look sad, Mr. Michael. Like you're missing someone too. The observation hit him like a physical blow. Michael had indeed been lonely, surrounded by wealth and success, but lacking genuine connection. His relationships had been shallow, his family had proven untrustworthy, and his friends were more interested in his money than his companionship. Emma, how did you learn to read those complicated documents? He asked, changing the subject to safer ground. I watch people, she said simply. When I hide in buildings, I see them working. The numbers make patterns, and patterns tell stories. Your papers told a story about someone trying to hurt you. Michael marveled at her intelligence. This wasn't just a bright child. Emma possessed an almost supernatural intuition about people and situations. Would you like to stay here tonight? I have a penthouse apartment upstairs. You'd have your own room, warm clothes, and all the food you want. Emma's eyes lit up, but then clouded with uncertainty. What if the bad men find me? What if I cause trouble for you? No one will hurt you while you're with me, Michael promised. "You saved my company, Emma. Now let me take care of you." As he watched her finish her meal, Michael felt something he had never experienced before, a fierce, protective love that went beyond rational explanation. Emma wasn't just a homeless child he was helping. She was becoming the family he had always wanted but never thought he deserved. But as they prepared to leave the office, Michael's phone buzzed with a text from his cousin James. "Heard about Uncle Robert. The family's not happy about you trusting some street kid over blood relatives. This isn't over." Michael deleted the message and took Emma's hand. He had a feeling their biggest challenges were just beginning. The penthouse apartment occupied the entire top floor of the Madison Tower, its modern luxury a stark contrast to the poverty Emma had known. But as Michael watched her explore the space with wide-eyed wonder, he noticed she seemed more interested in the view of the city than in the expensive furnishings. "All those lights," Emma whispered, pressing her face against the floor-to-ceiling windows. "Are there people behind each one?" "Most of them," Michael replied, joining her at the window. "Families having dinner, children doing homework, parents reading bedtime stories." Emma's expression grew wistful. "I used to watch windows like this with Mommy. She'd make up stories about the people inside. She said everyone deserves a place where they belong." Michael's throat tightened. "You belong here now, Emma. This is your home." Before Emma could respond, the private elevator chimed. Michael frowned. Only family members and his head of security had access to the penthouse. The doors opened to reveal his Aunt Margaret, his cousin James, and his younger sister Rachel. Their faces were grim, and Margaret's eyes immediately fixed on Emma with unconcealed disapproval. "Michael, we need to talk," Margaret announced, her voice sharp with authority. "About this situation." "There's no situation," Michael replied calmly, instinctively moving closer to Emma. "Emma is my guest." James stepped forward, his expensive suit and perfectly styled hair making him look like a younger version of his father, Robert. "A guest? Michael, she's a homeless child who somehow broke into our company's most secure floor. Don't you find that suspicious?" "What I find suspicious is that she exposed Uncle Robert's fraud," Michael shot back. "Maybe you should be thanking her instead of questioning her presence." Rachel, usually the peacemaker of the family, spoke up. "Michael, we're worried about you. You've been under so much stress since Dad died. Maybe you're not thinking clearly about this." Emma had remained silent during the exchange, but now she tugged on Michael's sleeve. "They don't want me here," she whispered. "I should go." "No," Michael said firmly, loud enough for everyone to hear. "You're not going anywhere." Margaret's face hardened. "Michael, be reasonable. This child could be part of some elaborate scheme. Street children are often used by criminals to gain access to wealthy families. You can't possibly believe her appearance in your office was coincidental." "Actually, I can," Michael replied, "because unlike some family members, Emma has never lied to me." The barb hit its mark. James's face flushed red. "You're choosing a stranger over your own family. I'm choosing someone who saved my company over people who seem more interested in controlling my decisions than supporting them," Michael answered. Emma suddenly spoke up, her small voice cutting through the tension. "The lady in the blue dress," she said, pointing at Margaret. "She's scared. Her heart is beating fast because she knows something." Margaret's confident expression faltered. "What is this child talking about?" "Emma has a gift for reading people," Michael said, studying his aunt's face. "What are you scared of, Aunt Margaret?" The silence that followed was deafening. Emma's innocent observation had once again exposed a truth that the adults in the room were trying to hide. Michael realized that saving his company from Robert's fraud might have been just the beginning of the deceptions within his own family. The next morning brought chaos to the Harrison Industries headquarters. News of Robert's arrest had leaked to the media, and reporters swarmed the building like vultures. Michael watched from his office window as security guards struggled to control the crowd, their cameras and microphones creating a feeding frenzy around the corporate scandal. Emma sat in the corner of his office, quietly drawing in a coloring book his assistant had brought. She had spent the night in the penthouse's guest room, and for the first time in months, Michael had slept peacefully, knowing someone else was in his home. The silence between them was comfortable, broken only by the soft scratching of crayons on paper. "Mr. Michael," Emma said without looking up from her drawing, "the phone is about to ring. It's the lady from yesterday." Sure enough, 10 seconds later, his phone buzzed with Margaret's number. Michael stared at Emma in amazement. "How did you know that?" "Patterns," Emma replied simply. "People do things in patterns. She's been calling every morning at this time since you moved to the big office." Michael answered the phone, putting it on speaker. "Good morning, Aunt Margaret." "Michael, we need to meet immediately. The board is calling an emergency session. Some members are questioning your judgment after yesterday's incident." "You mean after I prevented a $500 million fraud? After you publicly embarrassed a family member based on the word of a homeless child," Margaret corrected sharply. "The board is concerned about your mental state. They're discussing a temporary suspension of your CEO duties." Michael's blood ran cold. On what grounds? "Erratic behavior, poor judgment, and bringing an unvetted minor into sensitive corporate environments." "Michael, I'm trying to help you, but you need to distance yourself from this girl immediately." Emma had stopped coloring and was listening intently. Her blue eyes met Michael's and she shook her head slightly. "Don't trust her," she whispered. "I'll be there in an hour," Michael said into the phone, "but Emma stays with me." "Michael, that's exactly the kind of decision that's causing problems. You can't bring a child to a board meeting." "Watch me," Michael replied and hung up. Emma set down her crayon and walked over to his desk. "The board meeting is a trap," she said quietly. "They want to take your company away." "How do you know that?" "Because the same thing happened to my mommy. She worked at a big company, and when she found out about bad things, the important people made her go away." Emma's voice grew sad. "She said sometimes families hurt you more than strangers." Michael knelt down to Emma's level. "I won't let anyone hurt you, and I won't let them take what's rightfully ours. But I need you to stay here with Sarah while I go to this meeting." "No," Emma said firmly. "You need me there. I can see the lies they can't." As Michael looked into those wise blue eyes, he realized Emma was right. She had already saved his company once with her uncanny ability to spot deception. If his family was truly plotting against him, he would need every advantage he could get. "Okay," he decided, "but we do this together. No matter what happens in that boardroom, we're a team." Emma smiled for the first time since he'd met her. "Together," she agreed. The boardroom buzzed with tension as Michael and Emma entered hand in hand. The 12 board members, mostly older men in expensive suits, turned to stare at the unlikely pair. Margaret sat at the head of the table, her expression carefully neutral, while James occupied the seat that had once belonged to his father. "Gentlemen," Michael began, his voice steady despite the hostile atmosphere, "I understand you have concerns about recent events. I'm here to address them." Board member Thomas Whitfield, a long-time friend of Michael's father, cleared his throat. "Michael, we've known you since you were a child. Your father would be proud of how you've handled the company, but this situation—" He gestured toward Emma. "It's unprecedented." "What's unprecedented is that a 6-year-old child saved us from a $500 million fraud," Michael replied. "If anyone should be under review, it's our security protocols and oversight procedures that allowed Uncle Robert to alter those documents." Emma squeezed Michael's hand and stepped forward. "May I say something?" she asked politely. The board members exchanged glances. Margaret spoke first. "This is a business meeting, dear. Perhaps you should wait outside." "No," Michael said firmly. "Emma has earned the right to speak." Emma looked around the room with those penetrating blue eyes. "3 of you already decided to vote against Mr. Michael before we came in. The man in the brown tie," she pointed to Whitfield, "is sad because he doesn't want to, but the lady promised him something. The man with the grey beard already signed papers to sell his shares, and the young man who looks like the bad man from yesterday has been planning this for weeks." The room fell silent. Whitfield's face turned red. The elderly board member she'd identified touched his beard nervously, and James looked like he'd seen a ghost. "This is ridiculous," Margaret snapped. "You're letting a child's imagination disrupt a serious business meeting." But Emma wasn't finished. "The lady in the blue dress has a folder under her papers. It has new names on it, people who will run the company when Mr. Michael is gone. She's been meeting with them in secret." Margaret's carefully composed mask slipped. "How could you possibly know that?" "Because I was in the building when you had your meetings," Emma replied matter-of-factly. "I hide in lots of places. I saw you giving the new bosses papers and showing them Mr. Michael's office." The boardroom erupted in whispered conversations. Michael felt the pieces clicking into place. "This was never about my judgment or mental state. You've been planning a coup." "Michael, that's a serious accusation," Whitfield said, but his voice lacked conviction. Emma walked over to Margaret's seat. "The folder is right there under the blue papers. Show everyone." Margaret's hands moved protectively over her documents. "I don't have to subject myself to a child's fantasies." "Then you won't mind if I take a look," Michael said, reaching for the folder. The confrontation that followed would determine not just the fate of Harrison Industries, but the future of the unlikely family that Michael and Emma were becoming. As the truth began to emerge, Michael realized that Emma's gift for seeing through deception was about to save more than just his company. It was about to save their newfound bond from the very people who should have protected it. The tension in the boardroom reached a breaking point as Michael's hand hovered over Margaret's folder. The 12 board members watched in stunned silence as their carefully orchestrated meeting spiraled out of control. Emma stood beside Michael, her small frame radiating a confidence that seemed impossible for a 6-year-old child. "Margaret, if you have nothing to hide, then let me see what's in that folder," Michael demanded, his voice echoing through the mahogany-paneled room. Margaret's face had gone pale, but she maintained her composure. "This is absurd, Michael. You're allowing a homeless child to dictate corporate policy. The board needs to see that you're not fit to lead this company." "Actually," Thomas Whitfield interrupted, his voice heavy with regret, "I think we need to see what young Emma is talking about." He looked directly at Margaret. "You did promise me something in exchange for my vote, didn't you?" The admission sent shockwaves through the room. Margaret's carefully constructed facade began to crumble as other board members started exchanging suspicious glances. Emma stepped forward, her bright blue eyes scanning each face in the room with the precision of a seasoned detective. "The man with the grey beard," Emma pointed to elderly board member Harold Sinclair. "He signed papers 3 days ago. He sold his shares to the ladies' company. That's why he's been so quiet." Harold's weathered hands trembled as he reached into his briefcase. I did sign documents. Margaret approached me last month. She said Michael was too young, too unstable to handle the pressure. She offered to buy my shares at twice their market value." The revelation hit the room like a thunderbolt. Margaret had been systematically buying board members' loyalties and shares, positioning herself to take control of Harrison Industries. James shifted uncomfortably in his seat, clearly knowing more than he had admitted. "And you, James?" Michael turned to his cousin, his voice filled with disappointment. "What role do you play in this family betrayal?" James's hands clenched into fists. "You don't understand, Michael. This company is our legacy too. When Uncle Robert told us about your erratic behavior, about how you were making dangerous decisions, we had to act." "Erratic behavior?" Michael's voice rose. "You mean like preventing a $500 million fraud? Like saving the company our grandfather built?" Emma tugged on Michael's sleeve, her small voice cutting through the escalating argument. "Mr. Michael, there's something else. The lady in blue, she has a secret about why she really wants the company." Margaret shot to her feet, her composure finally breaking completely. "Enough! I will not be interrogated by a street child who has no business being in this boardroom." But Emma continued, her innocent voice carrying a weight that silenced the room. "She needs the company's money to pay for something bad she did. Something that happened a long time ago before I was born. She's scared the truth will come out." The color drained from Margaret's face entirely. Thomas Whitfield leaned forward, his business instincts sharpening. "Margaret, what is she talking about?" "This is preposterous," Margaret stammered. But her usual confidence had evaporated. "I've dedicated my life to this family's business interests." Emma walked closer to Margaret, her teddy bear clutched in one hand. "The papers in your desk at home, the ones in the secret drawer. They're about the money that disappeared from the Children's Hospital charity. You took it to pay for your husband's gambling debts, but you made it look like someone else did it." The boardroom erupted in chaos. Margaret's face went from pale to ashen as the accusation hung in the air. Several board members began talking at once, their voices overlapping in confusion and disbelief. "That's impossible," Margaret whispered, but her voice lacked conviction. "How could a child possibly know about—" "Because I see things," Emma said simply. "I see patterns, and I see when people are hiding bad things. Your heart beats different when you lie, and you've been lying about everything." Michael stared at his aunt in horror. The charity scandal had rocked the social circles of their city 5 years ago, ruining the reputation of an innocent accountant who had been wrongly accused. If Margaret was responsible, it meant she had not only stolen money meant for sick children, but had allowed an innocent man to take the blame. "Security!" Michael called out, his voice steady despite the emotional turmoil. "Please contact the police. We have more than corporate fraud to discuss with them." As Margaret was escorted from the boardroom, still protesting her innocence, the remaining board members sat in stunned silence. The hostile takeover attempt had crumbled, but the damage to the Harrison family seemed irreparable. Emma looked up at Michael with those wise blue eyes. "I'm sorry your family hurt you," she said softly, "but now you know who really cares about you." Michael knelt down and pulled Emma into a gentle hug, not caring who was watching. In the span of 2 days, this remarkable little girl had not only saved his company, but had exposed the corruption that had been eating away at his family for years. She had given him something more valuable than money. She had given him the truth. 3 weeks after the boardroom confrontation, Michael's penthouse had transformed into something he had never imagined it could be, a real home. Emma's laughter echoed through the previously sterile spaces as she played with the toys Michael had enthusiastically bought for her. Her room had become a rainbow of colors, filled with books, art supplies, and the new teddy bear collection that seemed to grow daily. But tonight, as Michael watched Emma draw at the kitchen table, he noticed she seemed quieter than usual. Her drawings, typically filled with bright colors and happy scenes, had taken on a more somber tone. The paper before her showed a small figure standing alone outside a large building. "What's that picture about, sweetheart?" Michael asked, sitting down beside her with 2 cups of hot chocolate. Emma didn't look up from her drawing. "It's about before I found you, when I was all alone and scared." She added another figure to the drawing, a tall man reaching out his hand to the small girl. "But this is when everything changed." Michael's heart swelled with emotion. Over the past 3 weeks, he had been working with the best family attorneys in the city to begin adoption proceedings for Emma. The process was complicated by her lack of official documentation, but Michael was determined to make her legally his daughter. "Emma, I need to tell you something important," he said gently. I've been talking to some special lawyers about making you officially part of my family. How would you feel about becoming Emma Harrison?" Emma's crayon stopped moving. She looked up at Michael with those penetrating blue eyes, and for a moment he feared he had moved too fast. But then a smile spread across her face, the brightest, most beautiful smile he had ever seen. "You want me to be your real daughter," she whispered. "More than anything in the world," Michael replied, his voice thick with emotion. "If you want me to be your daddy," Emma launched herself into his arms, her small body trembling with joy. "Yes, yes, I want to be your daughter forever and ever." As they hugged, Michael felt a completion he had never known was possible. But their moment was interrupted by the sound of the private elevator. Michael frowned. He had changed all the access codes after Margaret's arrest, and only his head of security and his attorney had the new ones. The elevator doors opened to reveal Detective Sarah Martinez, the lead investigator on Margaret's case, along with a woman Michael didn't recognize. The detective's expression was serious, and the unknown woman carried a manila folder that immediately put Michael on edge. "Mr. Harrison," Detective Martinez said formally, "I apologize for the late hour, but we need to discuss some new developments in your aunt's case. This is Jennifer Walsh from Child Protective Services." Michael's protective instincts flared immediately. He stood up, keeping Emma close to his side. "What kind of developments?" Ms. Walsh stepped forward, her expression professional, but not unkind. "Mr. Harrison, we've received some concerning information about Emma's situation. There are questions about the legality of her current placement, and we need to conduct a formal investigation." "What are you talking about?" Michael demanded. "Emma was homeless. I'm providing her with a safe, loving home while pursuing legal adoption." Detective Martinez consulted her notepad. "During our investigation of Margaret Harrison's financial crimes, we discovered that she had been in contact with certain individuals regarding Emma's presence in your home. She made some allegations about your motives and the circumstances of how Emma came to be here." Emma pressed closer to Michael, her small hand gripping his shirt. "I don't want to leave," she whispered, tears beginning to form in her eyes. "She's not going anywhere," Michael said firmly. "Margaret is a criminal who was trying to steal my company. She's hardly a credible source of information." Ms. Walsh opened her folder. "Mr. Harrison, while I understand your position, we have protocols we must follow. There are also some unusual circumstances surrounding Emma herself that we need to investigate." "What kind of circumstances?" Michael asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. "Her remarkable abilities, for one. The things she knew about the corporate fraud, her insights into people's behavior. It's raised questions about whether she might have been coached or used by someone with inside knowledge of your company." Michael felt his world beginning to tilt. "That's ridiculous. Emma has a natural gift for reading people and situations. She's an incredibly bright child." "Nevertheless," Ms. Walsh continued, "we need to conduct a full investigation. This includes a temporary placement in protective custody while we verify Emma's background and assess the situation." "No!" Emma cried out, clinging to Michael with desperate strength. "Please don't take me away from my daddy. He saved me. He loves me." The raw emotion in her voice broke Michael's heart. He looked at Detective Martinez, searching for any sign of flexibility. "There has to be another way. Emma has been through enough trauma in her short life." "I'm sorry, Mr. Harrison," the detective replied, "but until we can verify Emma's identity and conduct a proper investigation, she needs to be placed in temporary foster care. It's for her own protection." As the implications of the situation sank in, Michael realized that Margaret's final act of revenge was more devastating than any corporate takeover could have been. Even from her jail cell, she had found a way to tear apart the family he and Emma had built together. But as he looked down at Emma's tearful face, Michael made a silent promise. No matter what it took, no matter how many lawyers he had to hire or how many bureaucratic battles he had to fight, he would bring his daughter home. The emergency hearing took place in a sterile courtroom that felt more like a prison than a place of justice. Michael sat at the plaintiff's table with his team of attorneys, while across the aisle, Child Protective Services presented their case for continued custody of Emma. She had been in foster care for 1 week, the longest, most agonizing week of Michael's life. Judge Patricia Hoffman, a stern woman in her 60s, reviewed the case files with methodical precision. The courtroom was nearly empty except for the legal teams, a court reporter, and Detective Martinez, who had been called as a witness. "Your Honor," Michael's lead attorney, David Chen, began his opening statement. "My client is a successful businessman who provided shelter and care to a homeless child who was in immediate danger. Emma Harrison, and yes, she has already chosen to take his name, was living on the streets when she found refuge in Mr. Harrison's office. Not only did he protect her, but she actually saved his company from a massive fraud scheme." The CPS attorney, Maria Santos, stood to respond. "Your Honor, while Mr. Harrison's intentions may be good, the circumstances surrounding this case are highly unusual. The child in question demonstrated knowledge and abilities that suggest possible coaching or manipulation. We have concerns about how she obtained access to a secure corporate building and why she possessed information about complex financial documents." Judge Hoffman looked up from her papers. "Where is the child now? I'd like to hear from her directly." "She's in the courthouse children's room, Your Honor," Ms. Santos replied. "We felt the formal hearing might be too intimidating for a 6-year-old. "Bring her in," the judge ordered. "This case is about her welfare, and she deserves to have her voice heard." 10 minutes later, Emma entered the courtroom holding the hand of a social worker. She wore a simple blue dress that the foster family had provided, but Michael could see that the spark in her eyes had dimmed. When she spotted him, her face lit up briefly before the social worker guided her to the witness stand. Judge Hoffman's stern expression softened as she looked at Emma. "Hello, sweetheart. I'm Judge Hoffman. Do you understand why we're all here today?" Emma nodded solemnly. "The grown-ups are deciding if I can go home to my daddy or if I have to stay with the other family. And how do you feel about Mr. Harrison? Tell me about your time with him." Emma's voice was clear and strong, despite her small size. "Daddy Michael is the best person in the whole world. When I was cold and hungry and scared, he took care of me. He gave me my own room with pretty pictures and all the books I wanted. He reads me stories at night and makes me pancakes with smiley faces." "Emma," the judge continued gently, "some people are concerned about how you knew about the business papers in Mr. Harrison's office. Can you tell me about that?" "I see patterns," Emma explained simply. "Numbers tell stories, and people's faces tell stories too. When someone changes numbers to hurt other people, it makes a wrong pattern. I just noticed the wrong pattern and told Daddy Michael about it." Ms. Santos stood up. "Your Honor, this is exactly what concerns us. A 6-year-old child shouldn't be able to detect sophisticated financial fraud." But Emma wasn't finished. "I can also see that the lady asking questions doesn't really care about me. She's just doing her job because she has to. But the nice judge lady really wants to help children, and the police lady feels bad because she knows I belong with Daddy Michael." The courtroom fell silent. Once again, Emma's uncanny ability to read people had cut straight to the heart of the matter. Detective Martinez shifted uncomfortably in her seat, clearly affected by Emma's words. Judge Hoffman leaned forward. "Emma, are you happy with Mr. Harrison? Do you feel safe with him?" "He's my real daddy now," Emma said with absolute certainty. "Not because of papers or laws, but because he loves me, and I love him. When I was all alone in the world, he made me part of his family." Michael wiped tears from his eyes as he watched this brave little girl fight for their family. She was articulating feelings that he couldn't have expressed better himself. "Your Honor," David Chen interjected, "we have additional evidence we'd like to present. Character witnesses, financial statements proving Mr. Harrison's stability, and a psychological evaluation of Emma that shows she's thriving in his care." But Judge Hoffman raised her hand. "That won't be necessary, Counselor." She looked directly at Emma. "Sweetheart, do you have anything else you'd like to tell me?" Emma nodded earnestly. "Daddy Michael saved me, but I saved him too. We're both not alone anymore. Taking me away from him hurts both of us. And that doesn't help anybody." The judge was quiet for a long moment, studying the case files and then looking back at Emma and Michael. "In 30 years on the bench, I've heard thousands of custody cases, but I've rarely seen such a clear example of a child and guardian who genuinely belong together." Michael held his breath as the judge continued. "While the circumstances of this case are unusual, the welfare of the child is my primary concern. Emma is clearly intelligent, articulate, and most importantly, happy and healthy in Mr. Harrison's care." Judge Hoffman's gavel came down with finality. "Custody is awarded to Michael Harrison with expedited adoption proceedings to begin immediately." Emma let out a cry of joy and ran to Michael, who swept her up in his arms. As they hugged in the middle of the courtroom, Michael realized that their family had just become official in the eyes of the law. But in their hearts, they had been a family from the moment they found each other. 6 months later, Harrison Industries had not only recovered from the scandal, but had become more profitable than ever. Michael's reputation for integrity and his unique partnership with Emma had attracted new investors and clients who were fascinated by the story of the homeless girl who saved a corporation. But tonight, as snow fell softly outside the penthouse windows, Michael faced a challenge that no amount of business success could solve. Emma sat on her bed, surrounded by the DNA test results that had arrived that afternoon. Her small hands held the papers with trembling fingers as she struggled to understand the implications of what they revealed. Michael sat beside her, his own heart heavy with the weight of an impossible discovery. "So the test is right?" Emma asked quietly. "We're really related?" Michael nodded, still reeling from the revelation. "According to the DNA analysis, you're my half-sister. Not just my adopted daughter, we share the same father." The truth had emerged during the routine background check required for the adoption. When authorities couldn't locate any of Emma's family members, they had run her DNA through various databases. The match with Michael's DNA, which was on file from a medical procedure years earlier, had shocked everyone involved. "But that means—" Emma's voice trailed off as she tried to process the information. "It means your mother, Sarah, knew my father," Michael finished gently. "The lawyers found employment records showing she worked at Harrison Industries 8 years ago, before you were born. She was a financial analyst in the accounting department." Emma looked up at him with those familiar blue eyes, eyes that Michael now realized were so much like his own. "Did Daddy love her?" Michael's throat tightened. This was the hardest part of the revelation. "I think he did, sweetheart. I found some personal letters in his private papers. Your mother left the company suddenly, and he never knew she was pregnant with you." The implications were staggering. Emma wasn't just a homeless child he had rescued. She was his sister, the daughter their father never knew existed. The father who had died 3 years ago, never knowing he had another child living on the streets of the city where his company stood. "Why didn't Mommy tell him about me?" Emma asked, tears beginning to form in her eyes. Michael pulled her close, remembering the letters he had found. "From what I can piece together, your mother was afraid. Dad was married to my mother then, and they were going through a difficult time. Your mother probably thought it would be better to raise you alone than to complicate an already troubled marriage. So I'm not your adopted daughter anymore? You're my sister," Michael said softly. But Emma, that doesn't change how I feel about you. You're still the most important person in my world. Blood relation or not, we're family. Emma was quiet for a long moment, processing this life-changing information. Does this mean the lawyers will take me away again? Because the family situation is different now? No, Michael said firmly. The judge has already ruled that our guardianship arrangement serves your best interests. Whether you're my adopted daughter or my half-sister, you're staying right here with me. But what about the other family members? Aunt Margaret and Cousin James? If I'm really a Harrison, they might try to cause more trouble. Michael had been dreading this question. Margaret was still in prison, and James had disappeared after the corporate scandal, but there were other relatives who might see Emma's inheritance rights as a threat. As their father's biological daughter, Emma was entitled to a significant portion of the Harrison estate. "Let me worry about the family politics," Michael said. "What matters is that we found each other, and we're going to stay together no matter what." Emma hugged her teddy bear tighter. "I always felt like I belonged with you. Maybe my heart knew we were really brother and sister before our heads figured it out." Michael smiled through his tears. "You know what? I think you're right. From the moment I found you behind my desk, something felt different. I couldn't explain why I felt so protective of you, why I was willing to risk everything to keep you safe. Because we're really family," Emma said with a wisdom that still amazed him. "Not because of papers or tests, but because we were meant to find each other." As they sat together in the quiet penthouse, watching the snow fall over the city, Michael reflected on the incredible journey that had brought them together. A homeless child had wandered into his office and saved his company, but she had also saved something much more precious. She had given him the family he had always needed. The DNA results changed the legal framework of their relationship, but they didn't change the love they shared. Emma was his sister, his daughter, his family, and his greatest blessing, all rolled into one remarkable little girl. "Michael," Emma said sleepily, using his first name for the first time in months. "Yes, sweetheart? Can I still call you Daddy, even though we're brother and sister now?" Michael's heart melted. "You can call me whatever feels right to you. I'll always be the person who loves you most in the world, no matter what title we use." Emma smiled and closed her eyes. "Then you'll always be my daddy, because that's what you've been since the day you saved me." The revelation of Emma's true parentage had spread through the business community like wildfire, creating a media sensation that Michael had tried desperately to shield Emma from. The story of the homeless Harrison heiress who saved her brother's company captured public imagination, but it also attracted the wrong kind of attention. Michael stood in his office, staring out at the crowd of reporters that had been camped outside the building for 3 days. Emma was safely at home with her new private tutor, but the constant media scrutiny was taking its toll on both of them. His phone had been ringing non-stop with interview requests, book offers, and movie deals that he had no intention of accepting. "Sir," his assistant Sarah knocked and entered. "There's a woman here to see you. She says she's Emma's maternal grandmother." Michael's blood ran cold. In all their research into Emma's background, they had found no living relatives on her mother's side. "Are you sure? What's her name?" "Helen Carter. She has identification and some old photos that, well, they definitely show Emma's mother as a young woman." Michael's mind raced. If Emma had a living grandmother with legal rights, it could complicate everything they had built together. "Send her in, but ask Detective Martinez to come up as well. I want a witness to this conversation." Helen Carter was a woman in her 70s, well-dressed but with eyes that held the same sadness Michael had seen in Emma when he first found her. She carried a small suitcase and clutched a worn photograph in her weathered hands. "Mr. Harrison," she began, her voice shaky with emotion, "I've been looking for my granddaughter for 2 years. When I saw the news reports about Emma, I knew it had to be her. "Where have you been?" Michael asked. Michael, not bothering to hide his suspicion. "Emma was living on the streets. She told me her mother died 2 years ago." Mrs. Carter's eyes filled with tears. "My daughter Sarah and we had a terrible fight when Emma was 4. Sarah was struggling financially, and I wanted to help, but she was too proud. She accused me of trying to control her life, and she moved away with Emma. I hired private investigators, but Sarah was clever about staying hidden." She opened the suitcase and pulled out a stack of photographs and documents. "These are pictures of Sarah growing up, and here's Emma as a baby. I have Sarah's birth certificate, school records, everything that proves I'm her mother." Michael examined the documents while Detective Martinez looked over his shoulder. Everything appeared legitimate, and the baby pictures were unmistakably Emma. "Mrs. Carter," Michael said carefully, "assuming you are who you say you are, what are your intentions regarding Emma?" The elderly woman's face crumpled. "I just want to meet her. I lost my daughter, and I've missed 2 years of my granddaughter's life. I'm not here to take her away from you. The news reports made it clear that you love her, and she's happy with you. I just want to be part of her life." Detective Martinez spoke up. "Mrs. Carter, can you tell us what happened to Emma's mother? We were never able to locate a death certificate." "Sarah had cancer," Mrs. Carter said quietly. "She was too proud to come home for treatment, and by the time I found out it was too late. A neighbor told me that Sarah died at a free clinic and Emma just disappeared. I've been searching for her ever since." Michael felt his protective instincts warring with his sympathy for the grieving grandmother. "Mrs. Carter, I need to ask you directly. Are you here because you want a relationship with Emma, or because you learned she's entitled to a Harrison inheritance?" Mrs. Carter looked shocked. "Inheritance? Mr. Harrison, I don't care about money. I have enough to live comfortably. I just want to hold my granddaughter and tell her stories about her mother. Sarah was such a bright, loving girl, and Emma deserves to know about her." Something in the woman's voice rang true. Michael had become expert at detecting deception, and Mrs. Carter seemed genuinely motivated by love, not greed. "If I arrange for you to meet Emma," Michael said slowly, "it will be on our terms, in our home, with counselors present. Emma has been through enough trauma, and I won't allow anyone to disrupt her stability." "Of course," Mrs. Carter agreed eagerly, "whatever you think is best for Emma. I just want the chance to tell her how much her mother loved her, and how sorry I am that I wasn't there when she needed me." Michael made his decision. "Detective Martinez, would you mind conducting a background check on Mrs. Carter? If everything checks out, we'll arrange a supervised meeting." As the detective and Mrs. Carter made arrangements for the verification process, Michael wondered how Emma would react to learning she had a grandmother. She had built her identity around being an orphan who found a family with Michael. Would the appearance of a blood relative threaten the security she had found, or would it provide her with the maternal connection she had lost? One thing was certain: their family was about to face another test, and Michael would do whatever it took to protect Emma's happiness while honoring her right to know her heritage. The phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. Sarah's voice came through the intercom. "Sir, Emma's on line 1. She says it's important." Michael picked up the phone. "Hi, sweetheart. How are your lessons going?" "Daddy," Emma's voice was excited but serious, "I had another one of my feelings. Someone from Mommy's family is coming to see me today, aren't they?" Michael's breath caught. Emma's intuitive abilities continued to amaze him. "How did you know that?" "I dreamed about Mommy last night, and she told me her mother was looking for me. She said it was okay to love you and love Grandma too. Is that right, Daddy? Can I have both families?" Michael smiled through his tears. Once again, Emma's wisdom surpassed her years. "Yes, sweetheart, you can have all the love and family you want. Love doesn't run out, it just grows bigger." "Good," Emma said happily, because I have a lot of love to give, and I want to share it with everyone who really cares about me. The meeting between Emma and her grandmother Helen took place in the comfortable living room of the penthouse, with Michael, Detective Martinez, and a child psychologist present. Emma sat curled in Michael's lap, studying the elderly woman with those perceptive blue eyes that had become so familiar to everyone who knew her. Helen had brought a photo album filled with pictures of Emma's mother, Sarah. From her childhood through her college years, Emma turned each page slowly, absorbing every detail of the mother she barely remembered. "This is Mommy when she was my age," Emma observed, pointing to a picture of a 6-year-old Sarah with the same blonde hair and blue eyes. "She looks just like me. You're identical to how she looked," Helen said softly, her voice thick with emotion. "Sarah was the smartest little girl, always asking questions about everything. She loved numbers and puzzles, just like you do." Emma looked up at Michael. "See, Daddy, I got my smart from Mommy's side, too." Michael smiled, squeezing her gently. "You got the best from both sides of your family." Helen reached into her purse and pulled out a small jewelry box. "Emma, I have something that belonged to your mother. She would have wanted you to have it." Inside the box was a delicate silver locket with a tiny diamond in the center. Helen opened it to reveal 2 photos, one of baby Emma and one of Sarah. "Mommy wore this every day," Helen explained, "even when things were difficult between us. She never took it off. The nurse at the clinic gave it to me after she passed away." Emma reached for the locket with reverent hands. "It's beautiful. Will you help me put it on?" As Helen fastened the chain around Emma's neck, Michael watched the profound moment of connection between grandmother and granddaughter. The psychologist had been right. Emma was resilient enough to handle expanding her family circle. "Grandma Helen," Emma said after studying more photos, "why did you and Mommy have a fight?" Helen's face showed her regret. "I was afraid your mother was making poor choices, and I tried to control her instead of just supporting her. When you love someone very much, sometimes you think you know what's best for them, even when you don't. Like how some of Daddy's family tried to control his company." "Exactly like that. Sweetheart, family sometimes makes mistakes because they're scared or worried, not because they don't love you." Emma nodded wisely. "Daddy taught me that love means trusting people to make their own choices, even when you're scared for them." Michael felt a surge of pride in Emma's emotional maturity. In less than a year, she had gone from a traumatized, homeless child to a wise little girl who understood complex family dynamics better than most adults. "Emma," Helen continued, "I want you to know that I don't expect anything to change between you and your daddy. You've found your home with him, and I can see how much you love each other. I just hope I can be part of your life as your grandmother." "Can you visit us for dinner sometimes?" Emma asked. "And maybe you could teach me how to cook Mommy's favorite foods." "I would love that more than anything," Helen replied. Tears of joy streaming down her face, Detective Martinez had been quietly observing the interaction. "Mr. Harrison, I think it's safe to say that Mrs. Carter's motives are genuine. The background check came back clean, and it's obvious that Emma is comfortable with her." Michael nodded. "Mrs. Carter, Helen, we'd like to invite you to be part of Emma's life. Maybe you could come for dinner once a week, and Emma could stay with you occasionally if she wants to." "Can we start tonight?" Emma asked excitedly. "I want to hear more stories about Mommy. And I want to show Grandma Helen my room and all my books." As the afternoon progressed, Michael watched Emma seamlessly weave her newfound grandmother into their family dynamic. She showed Helen her artwork, read her a story, and even convinced her to help make dinner. By evening, it felt like Helen had always been part of their lives. Later that night, after Helen had gone home with promises to return for Sunday dinner, Emma sat on Michael's lap as he read her a bedtime story. "Daddy," she said thoughtfully, I think Mummy sent Grandma Helen to find us. Why do you think that? Because now I have my whole family together. I have you as my daddy and brother, and I have Grandma Helen to tell me about Mommy, and we all love each other without trying to hurt each other or take anything away. Michael kissed the top of her head. You know what I think? What? I think you're the one who brought us all together. You saved my company, you exposed the bad people in our family, and now you've healed the hurt between your mother's family. You're like a little angel who fixes broken things. Emma giggled. I'm not an angel, Daddy. I'm just Emma. But I like fixing broken things and making families happy. As Michael tucked Emma into bed, he reflected on the incredible journey they had shared. From a frightened homeless child hiding behind his desk to a beloved daughter who had transformed his entire life, Emma had brought healing and purpose to everyone she touched. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and adventures. But tonight, Michael felt the deep satisfaction of knowing that Emma's family circle was complete. She had her adoptive father who adored her, her biological connection to the Harrison legacy, and now her maternal grandmother to provide stories and love from her mother's side. The little girl who had once been alone in the world now had more family than she knew what to do with, and she had created it all through the simple power of love, wisdom, and an uncanny ability to see the truth in people's hearts. Their story was far from over, but this chapter had ended with the most important victory of all. A family bound not just by blood or law, but by the unbreakable bonds of chosen love.